Hey everyone, welcome back to another Kitecast episode. We're in for a real treat today. Alan Shimel is joining Tim and me today. Tim, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How you doing, Patrick?
Doing well. It's Friday.
Yay.
Super Bowl. It's right around the corner, right?
Go Niners.
Alan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here, guys. And, I don't have a horse in the race in the Super Bowl this year. I'm looking forward to it. Sometimes it's better to watch a football game that way.
Yeah.
That's very true. Well, everyone, many of you may be familiar with Alan as you listen to his various podcasts, his webinars, you read some of the stuff he writes. He's been in the industry for many, many years. He's the CEO and founder of Techstrong Group. It's a global platform that powers tech innovation and transformation and empowers experts and professionals to create content across various media, research, and consulting brands. These include DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Cloud Native Now, Techstrong AI, Techstrong TV. I could go on. There's others that Alan's constantly adding to the portfolio. He also is the editor-in-chief and founder of DevOps.com, was the co-founder of DevOps Institute, which I think you guys recently sold a few years ago, right, Alan?
About a year ago now. I think the end of this month will be a year.
Yeah, and we can talk a bit about that. I could go on and on. He has a Juris Doctorate, so we got to watch what we say, Tim, today. New Yorker. He's a graduate of St. John's University.
Absolutely. Go Redmen.
Actually, so, Alan, maybe
that shows you how old I am. I don't say Redmen. It's not Redmen. It's the Red Storm.
Well, I think all of us have some white and gray hair, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, but politically correct. They changed the name.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
It used to be the Redmen when I was there.
So, Alan, not everyone in our audience may be familiar with what you guys are doing over at Techstrong. Maybe a good starting point would be to talk about what the organization does. You've been around, 9 years? It's evolved over those 9 years?
Actually, March 14th will be 10 years.
Wow.
Since we published for the first time at DevOps.com. So Techstrong and Techstrong Group is, we use the word omni-channel. We produce and distribute content, right? But our content is very, very focused in the areas of DevOps, cybersecurity, cloud native, digital transformation, and now AI, right? Because everything's AI. And we have plans, actually, I can't announce it yet, but I think we're going to have a new site within the next 60 days.
Oh, wow.
And another, same kind of thing, though, an adjacent area of technology.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So you guys do cover just a broad breadth of stuff, but you're a media company as well. And I don't think Tim and I have interviewed someone who's done that.
It's the it's creating content and then distributing content. Now, we distribute content that we didn't necessarily create, right? That's part of that media thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, our mission is to educate and inform our audience, it's a worldwide audience. I mean, I could go through numbers, but we serve up to millions of people over the course of a year. And about 52% of those people are managers or above at their organization, which means 48% aren't, right? And so it's a good mix of practitioners, managers, C-level, etc. And, those are I call them our eyeballs, though now they're more ears as well as eyeballs. And, they listen, they watch, they read. But it comes out great. And we just produce a lot of content. We have Techstrong.tv that produces, 12, 15 hours a week of video content. Not to mention how many articles get published on the various sites.
So I have an insertion question before we get into a lot of tech stuff, just around your business. You mentioned you're starting or recently started AI, probably AI in tech, but you're a content business. Are you guys exploring twofold? One, how AI can help you generate more quality content, and then the B part of that is, are you seeing an impact from all the non-quality content that other companies are jamming into the website? Because I imagine SEO is a big hook to your readership and exposure.
Yeah. So, number one, are we looking at using AI? Absolutely, positively. I use AI every day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do we.
So, and anyone who tells you no's lying.
Right.
Yeah.
That being said, we actually, I recorded a segment for Techstrong TV today about an article that was in, I think, Techstrong AI this week before, which is AI generates crappy code for the most part. It generates a lot of code. They're saying now, what is it, 60% of all the code being done on the internet has AI fingerprints on it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's good code. And it's the same thing with content. Just because you can doesn't mean it's good or you should. We've instructed our writers and then even people who submit, bylines and so forth, that if it smells kind of AI, like AI wrote it, because, I'm not claiming I can spot AI generated stuff, but generally when it gets too flowery and stuff like that, you could see it. And we're trying, we're telling people we don't want AI generated.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay I think the state of AI now, there's two things you do here. One is you ask it to start your content, so it gives you sort of a base, and then you add your special sauce and edit it and change it, but at least you got something to start with.
Yeah.
Or the other way, you write it and then give it to AI to kind of polish up maybe a little bit. Make it more persuasive, make it shorter, longer, whatever you want to say. But I'm not naive enough to think that people aren't using AI and trying to game the system. Again, that was a discussion we had on Techstrong Gang today, that supposedly there was a recent announcement, I think from Google and some others, that they're going to have a service now that will spot AI-generated content out there. The DALL-E project, which is through OpenAI, their graphics generator, is now starting to put watermarks in to what they generate that says, hey, this was generated by an AI tool.
Yeah.
I think there's always a gap. I actually learned this in law school. There's always a gap between technology and society catching up to it. We're in that gap right now. AI, the technology is racing ahead, and we haven't caught up to it from a legal point of view, from a societal usage point of view, because people run as fast as they can with stuff, right? And it takes. But I think that's
CISO, Alan, or CIO, or risk officer, and so forth. You're just inundated with all this content because, as you point out, AI. There's a bunch of folks who are using it. Some are using it in good ways, that are making their content better, more readable. They're getting more research. It's beneficial for them as well as the actual listeners or the readers. But you also have a bunch of stuff that's just inundating the airwaves, that's fluff, that doesn't add a whole lot of value. Where do you go if you're there's all this stuff out there. I mean, there's places like Techstrong and what you're doing that has quality content. But how do you there's only so much time in the day. How do you find those sources and then stay up to speed?
You know what? This is a problem. It's a problem in tech, but it's a problem in society in general.
Yeah.
How do you ascertain quality content? Right? When the three of us were younger, right? I remember when cable first started coming out, right? Before cable, I lived in New York. I had, I think, 5 channels, maybe 6 channels, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the news was the news. You could have, Uncle Walter or Dan Rather when he left, and, Tom Brokaw and whoever was on ABC.
Walter Cronkite, right? We're dating ourselves, Alan, now.
Yeah, but it was easy. You didn't have the dilemma that you have now, which is, how do I know what's real? How do I know what's true? How do I know what's quality? And it's a deficit, not just in America, in the world, of of all the riches that we have with all this content. Separating our quality is is hard. And I think that leads to a lot of the problems that we have in this world.
Yeah, I think one of the things, not to go down too far in a rabbit hole, but I've thought about this quite a bit recently from how do you know what you know? And I think there's a couple layers here. Content without supporting data points, it's just words in the world. There's no reference point to the, let's say, call it the perspective. But if you have content, I don't care who creates it, and then supporting data points that validate it, then you've got trustworthy information. And then it's just, well, where the data points come from. And then if you find where the data points come from, and it's a reputable source that does, surveys across different dynamics of whatever that data point is related to, then you're good. But the problem is it takes work. You can't just be one of those people that just sort of lets the world wash over you with information and assume everything's okay. You gotta make it a point,
Well, and honestly, I think kids coming up today, like I look at my kids who recently graduated college and stuff, maybe because they're digital natives, they do that better than we do. Right? They tend to, they don't just blindly believe everything they hear, see, or read.
That's good.
For the most part, I think that just they don't take it for granted, where a lot of us do, I think.
Yeah. Our sources are limited. A lot more sources to look for. And
there also might be generation gaps there that kind of swap generations. My kids are 13 and 11. And so, we have our iPhones are toggled to parental controls and things like that. But man, when they get that 1 hour of social, it's just a flood of absolute facts from their perspective.
Well, but here's the thing. They're 13, 14. By the time they're 18 and 20, they will have had the opportunity to say, that's not
true.
It's hokey.
Yeah.
Now, I think AI is going to screw with that in a bad way because, with AI, you can make stuff look pretty real with deep fake. I don't know. We had an article in Security Boulevard last week. I don't know if you heard this story about some bank branch manager, I think in Singapore or Asia anyway, gets a video call from the CFO of a client of theirs, of the bank. And it's the CFO and two other people from the company, and they tell him they're doing a big deal and they need to transfer $20 million. And it was the way they were transferring was a little out of the ordinary. That's why the CFO was zooming in. So it was him and why they were doing it that way, because otherwise the bank wouldn't do it. And the bank manager, was the CFO talking to him. He saw him in the Zoom and everything. And he sent the $20 million. Well, it wasn't the CFO. It was
artificial avatars.
Yeah.
No, I hadn't read that. I will look for that though, because that's incredibly scary.
And once you wire money, good luck getting that back.
Yep.
$20 million.
Jesus.
Hey, Alan, you probably saw the announcement yesterday, and then there's sort of been a series building up over the last 3 or 4 months from the government. We have the NIST. I forgot exactly that's focused on safe AI that was just announced yesterday. Do you, we're going to try to regulate this stuff. You've been in the space a long time. Is this going to work? Is it going to partially address the problem? You have an opinion there?
Do I have an opinion or a wish? I wish it would work and we could. But let's look at the history of compliance and security and stuff like that. Let's take PCI. I mean, PCI did a lot of good things. But, around keeping credit card numbers. But how much?
The WAF industry.
Yeah. Well, it probably did even better. It did even more. Now with APIs, we bypass it. But, I always think of compliance as lowest common denominator security, right? It's the minimum of what you should do. maybe it'll pass the reasonableness test when you get called into court that I did, by following the minimum of what I had to do for compliance, I wasn't negligent or criminal negligent or something like that. But it certainly doesn't represent best practices. And I think that's what you need to remember. When they pass these kinds of things like Safe AI or the SBOM stuff for software supply chains, stuff like that, that's the low bar, not the high bar, guys. Right? And we need to shoot for the high bar.
Yeah, people still seem to struggle. IT professionals, cybersecurity, struggle getting the low bar. Then, right?
Well, yes, they do. They do.
And that's not. I don't know. That's not saying a lot.
No, it's been. I've been in security 25 plus years. It's been that way the whole time, unfortunately. Though I think we're better. I think we do. I think we've done a good job. Things like DevSecOps and stuff have made security, like we always wanted to say, security is everyone's responsibility. I think we do have that now. People are more security conscious.
Yeah.
But they're not security admins. They're not security pros. Don't expect them to be.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of that is, obviously the lack of skills and professionals to do the job.
That's a whole other thing, the skill gap. But yet, the biggest thing I hear from, I call them kids, from people breaking in, then these are people who, not like us. They went to school and took cybersecurity classes.
Right.
An area of concentration and majors in cyber. They can't get jobs.
Yeah.
They're like,
really?
Yeah, the biggest question we hear from people like that is, how can I land my first job? Because every job wants 3 to 5 years of experience.
I see. Yeah.
Right? So they say we have a skills gap, but they don't give people the opportunity to on-ramp those skills. You're not born with 3 to 5 years of cybersecurity experience. Right? It's like when I first launched DevOps.com, it was around for 2 or 3 years, the whole DevOps thing. And all these jobs for DevOps engineers wanted 5 to 10 years of DevOps experience.
Yeah.
It was not 5 to 10 years. But anyway, I think that is a big part of our skills gap.
Our daughter's about to finish her MBA in a couple months, and I'm seeing a few of the jobs that she's applying for, and they're just as you described, 5, 6, 10 years of experience.
Right.
Job that, 10 years ago, it was an entry-level position. But people like Tim and me were demanding, we want to hire people who are experienced. If the marketplace supports it, we're going to ask for it. And the same thing applies in cybersecurity.
But in cyber, I don't know, this is why we have a skills gap. That's why we can't fill the jobs until we, I think, get real about that.
Speaking of AppSec, in past years, you and I have talked about AppSec. With AI, how AI is sort of transforming how AppSec is done. It's made it a lot easier, a lot faster. It lowered that bar in terms of the entry point. But is it improving security? What's your opinion on that front? Where are we headed?
So, quick plug: this year at RSA conference for the, I think, 8th or 9th year, we're doing the DevSecOps event on Monday at the Moscone Center with RSA. And of course, this being the year of AI, this year our focus is DevSecOps and AI. And to a large degree, DevSecOps is AppSec, right? It's about securing that application, maybe further left and all the way through deployment and post-deployment. So AI is having a huge impact there.
Do you think it's going to take out some businesses who have created non-AI based, antique coding approaches to finding and fixing vulnerabilities? And what do you think is going to do to the industry?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, it's about low bars versus high bars. If you're doing basic code review, sort of
like SAST and stuff like that,
I think AI is going to do that really easy. You could do it now. I don't know if you ever played taking code and putting it into AI and say,
yeah, I have.
Show me vulnerability. Show me what every syntax here means and does. It's probably the greatest way to learn a code I've ever seen in my life.
Agreed. Yeah.
It's the same thing with finding kind of rudimentary stuff.
Yeah. We have an old colleague that we used to work with, Sarag Patel. He started a company called Pixie that is basically just springboarded off of. They got in at the right time, I think, and it's all AI driven. Find and fix. It's incredibly fast, and there's just a lot more of those happening. So if I look back at the Impervas and the Synopsises and things like that have kind of these older models and older businesses around that, I think they're going to be a little bit in trouble, to be honest.
I don't doubt it. And I think that sort of outlook goes beyond security companies. I think there's a lot of companies in observability and what we used to call APM, application performance monitoring or management. SIM stuff is another one, right?
Yeah.
Because I think what's going to happen, you're going to see, is what we were calling AI ops or machine learning is getting better every day. And that becomes a driver that then generative AI, it's sort of like how you need a fission nuclear device to set off a fusion nuclear device. Right?
Yeah.
You need a regular.
You must have just watched Oppenheimer.
Yeah, well, I did. But it's the same thing. I think when you take the output of machine learning kind of AI ops and then, put some generative AI on top of that, it gets awful smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to
these companies, what's the hope for them? Do they have these old code bases that didn't necessarily leverage AI to the extent they needed to? Now AI is going to pass them by. Can they bolt AI on those? Or is it easier to start from scratch, or it depends?
I think it's going to depend. Look, everybody and their mother is making a co-pilot, right? And I think making a co-pilot to enhance your product service isn't necessarily rocket science today, right? You can go grab all your data, create your own LLM, and plug it into that AI. Is that going to fundamentally make you AI powerhouse? I don't know. I think it depends on how well they do it. I mean, even you take a thing like Stack Overflow, right? We all love Stack Overflow. That's basically what they did, right? They took all of their knowledge base of answers, questions and answers over the years and created another LLM that sits on top of the general LLM that powers many of the AIs today. And so when you do an AI query on, I forget what Stack Overflow calls it, they have a name for the offering. It actually is pulling from there first before it goes to the general AI one. So
interesting. AI would theoretically, if organizations will use it correctly, all that open source code that's out there, you don't know for sure if it has vulnerabilities in every instance. It should improve that process, I would think, in terms of ensuring that code's cleaner when you bring it into your environment, if you can leverage AI in the right way.
You know what? The Linux Foundation actually just, I think Linux Foundation Open Source Security, OSSF, actually they came out with a research report on that recently. Something like, this was a survey of the maintainers of open source projects. And like 70-something% said exactly that. They think, it could help with the security of open source projects, making more secure code. I'll see it when I believe it, or I'll believe it when I see it. Excuse me. I'll believe it when
we understand.
Yep.
Well, we have we've talked so much in the past year about AI. I think I'm all set.
We're all a little AI'd out, I guess.
Yeah. But one thing that it's probably not a tomorrow thing. I mean, we'll see, but it's certainly a 10-year thing. But have you started in your media outlets and your TV station, Techstrong, started to talk to quantum computing vendors, quantum cybersecurity stuff that's popping up, and like, what are you seeing there? I'd be interested if that's now starting to get more top of mind.
So I've been following that subject for the last 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Want to know something? This is one area where the government and the regulatory bodies actually got out ahead of it.
Mm.
Right? NIST and MITRE have worked on it. I've spoken to folks at both of them, as well as at the leading certificate companies. They've already published quantum proof algorithms. Because, the big fear here was that quantum computers bust RSA encryption or SSL encryption, in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
But they now have come out with quantum proof algorithms, and they'll be you'll be able to get quantum proof certificates to encrypt your data at rest, in transit, etc. And the funny thing is, I don't think we're going to see true quantum computing available probably not till maybe 2030.
Yeah, that's about right. I was thinking, kind of 10 years out, just because the smartest minds and the most money in the world still can't get them stable for more than a few seconds or whatever it is now.
Look, they're making, the quantum computers work on what they call qubits, right?
Yeah.
That was the thing that, and if I get it wrong, I apologize. To have a stable quantum machine, I think you got to have 1,000 qubits, and we're up to 100 or a couple hundred.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And, we'll see. But, again, we have quantum proof algorithms there. Now, how many people will adopt that? I learned a lesson about 15 years ago. I remember doing a podcast interview, actually, with the CEO of Couchbase and MongoDB. At the time, NoSQL databases were the cool thing. And I asked them, I said, a lot of people say NoSQL stands for no security. How come you guys aren't doing a better job around security with your databases? And they both said the same thing. They said, Alan, we'll put better security in when our customers demand it.
Yeah, that's usually the case.
Right?
The market drives it.
Yep. Right. So when the market says, I need some quantum proof technology, it'll be, developed, but not before.
What we'll see, but what might drive that is, back to the compliance, the regulators, they might, just like PC,
right? That's still the market driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to have it.
Prompting to make that decision.
Yeah. That's what you're dealing with.
Alan, with your law degree, you probably have a unique perspective in terms of, organizations, do they underestimate the negative impact of a breach, right? You have the IBM reports, 4.5, 4.6, or whatever it is, the average cost of a data breach. Do organizations often forget the long tail effect of a breach, where whether you're a software vendor and you're hacked in it, your supply chain, or you're an actual end user, school district, healthcare organization, you're breached, the class action lawsuits, all the legalities that happen, is that factored into that 4.5? I think often it isn't. It's actually bigger than the hairball's bigger than we realize.
The 4.5 goes up to like credit monitoring. Like it covers all the way up to that. But here's the fact. When I first got into security, they used to say that the reason why like retailers didn't do more in security is because they had it built into their model. They called it shrinkage. And it was, generally less than 0.5% of their revenue. So at 0.5%, it was cheaper to write that stuff off than it was to do something about it. I think when it comes to breaches, the facts are, especially for large public entities, that breach becomes a small blip on their stock price and operations. As a matter of fact, some use it as a red badge of courage, and do even better with it. Now, for a smaller company, though, it could be catastrophic, put you out of business, right? You get hit with a ransom attack and your website doesn't pull up, or you lost all your customers' data and it was exposed on the internet publicly. It could be lights out. But the bigger companies, they get through it. Look at Target, if you remember the Target breach, Equifax, right? They turn around and say, hey, it's kind of like, in America, it's okay to be an addict if you go into rehab, right? That's like the right thing to do. And I don't care whether you're addicted to drugs, sex, rock and roll, right? If you go into rehab, you come out and you're cleansed. I think a lot of times it's the same thing with these breaches, right? Mea culpa, we messed up. We got a new CISO.
If they do it right, yeah.
Right, and we're putting in new processes and policies and training, and this won't happen again. Well, unless you're like LastPass or one of these repeat offenders that seem to get breached every 3 months. 6 months. But that's the reality of it. Yes, the legal cost is a pain in the butt, but much like the 0.5%, it's rounding errors.
Yeah.
Bigger picture for some of these companies. That's it.
Yeah. I think it's probably more when you get into mid-size, smaller.
Go one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
Now, and also the other thing that's come on the scene, over the last few years is cyber insurance.
Yeah.
Right? Is your insurance going to cover that?
So I have a question about that. I was at Contrast. We're at Kiteworks now. We were at Contrast before, Fortinet. Patrick and I have been hanging out for a while. Every one of these cybersecurity companies, I've been in the room where we talk about how do we influence the insurance carriers to demand their customers use our solutions to lower risk and lower their policy. Every one of them. Do you have any insight on that? Because there are 3,500 or more
insurance companies are.
What's that?
Some of the cyber insurance companies now are saying, "Hey," because what took place, I think, over the last 3 years is some of these kind of purpose-built cyber insurance companies, right? They became the new PCI Council. They were the ones who are establishing what your lowest common denominator bar is for security. And they're also the auditor.
Mm-hmm.
To make sure you've got a good vulnerability management, that you're pen testing your code, that you got endpoint security, you've got IAM, whatever the case may be. So these insurance companies are becoming the security architects and auditors to make sure they won't give you insurance unless you meet that.
Yeah.
And some of them have taken it a step further that said, hey, you got to have one of these 3 firewalls. And if you don't, we're partnered with Firewall B. And we can, put that in there as part of your premium and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
you are seeing that actually happen.
Well, yeah, I think the security insurers, the cyber insurers, are becoming the enforcers of cyber policy. It's not necessarily a good thing all the time, though. Mm-hmm. Right? I think because part of them giving the insurance is they call the shots.
Yeah.
And they settle a case, of course, from a business decision. It's easier for them to settle without admitting liability. But you may feel, I didn't do anything wrong. Those guys are idiots. But it's their dollar, and they get to call the shot.
They become the arbitrators. Does that supplant things like FedRAMP, or do they rely on FedRAMP and ISO?
Again, they rely on FedRAMP and those things as the lowest common denominator, but they're making decisions on actuarial tables on what their risk is, right?
Yeah, it's all money.
And
Balance sheet.
insurers are good at managing risk.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. The biggest place you see this is in ransomware. Right?
Yes.
There's a lot of people. The ransomware, the insurance company will tell you cannot negotiate with the ransom people. We'll negotiate because we already have a database based upon what ransom is and what gang it is, what they'll take to go away and unleash, whether they're trustworthy to unencrypt stuff once we pay them.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah,
So wild.
they make those calls. They don't want you making those calls.
Yeah, and if you're a ransomware company, which is a thing, you want to be in good standings with your word that you'll decrypt at a certain payoff level, right? So that you can continue doing your business.
No, you don't. And then what do you do?
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Go to the Better Business Bureau for ransomware providers, right?
Well, you had the CLOPS attack on the MFT provider this past year. Prove it. They were so successful, they were overwhelmed. The point they couldn't do the typical functionary call. The functionary calls out to those who had been hacked. They had to tell them go to the website to find out if you're hacked.
But again, we laugh knowingly, but people who aren't in cyber are amazed at the sophistication and scale of the dark web, of the bad guys. They, talk about AI. They're using AI like mad, probably more and better than the white hats are.
Sure.
Yeah.
The pace of technology innovation is outstripping our ability to ethically manage its implications.
Agreed. And that's for a long time.
Okay. Cybersecurity risks are now a bigger threat to global stability than military threats.
Disagree. It's getting close, but in an age where we got a war in the Ukraine and one in the Middle East and drones and all this crap, the military still is.
And they're all intertwined.
Yeah. But it's almost you can't have one without the other too today. They go hand in hand.
Yeah. I just wonder at what point the, cybersecurity will, you don't need to drop a bomb over there. You just drop a virus and all of a sudden their entire critical infrastructure goes down and they can't be
No, it reminds me Star Trek, the original series. I don't know if you guys have checked.
I do. I remember I watched every episode.
Two worlds were fighting with each other. They wouldn't actually blow up bombs. They would have computer simulated missile attacks. And if you lived or were in a place where a computer simulated missile attack happened, you had to report like to the death chamber where they would, vaporize you. And the Star Trek, Kirk and the team were down there on a shore, visit or whatever, and they were victims of the missile attack. And of course, they wouldn't walk into the chamber and get vaporized. And that set off a whole war because now, after 200 years, they were going to have to use real bombs, right? And real people would die, not just shut down critical infrastructure or something.
Yeah, and interesting. Came full circle.
Peace.
Yeah, right? Came from
so everything you need to know in life, you can learn from Star Trek.
Star Trek, right? Exactly. All right, couple more. The rise of remote work will eventually lead to the end of large tech hubs in like Silicon Valley.
Strongly disagree. Dell just sent out an email this week to all 125,000 employees. It's time to come back to work at least 3 days a week. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but you'll never get a promotion. And I think Google's done this, Apple's done it, Meta's doing it. Everybody's doing it around the world. People are realizing that remote work, for some professions, it's okay, but you're a much more productive company when your people are in the office.
Yeah, I hope that's the case for sounding off from someone who has a house in Silicon Valley that...
no, it's not going.
All right, good. Final one. The biggest threat to cybersecurity in organizations is not the sophistication of the hackers, but the negligence of the employees.
Agree, and that hasn't changed. It's still the weakest link.
Yeah.
And I don't know,
Rich will
training.
be the company that figures that out, right?
Yeah, I don't, I think it's talking about changing human nature, and I don't know how you change human nature.
Yeah. All right, I'm done, Patrick. That was fun.
All right.
No, it's been a fascinating conversation, Alan. We need to do this again. We need to
Anytime.
talk about data security. We
We
can do it.
never even got to the data security piece, but hey, just let me know. Happy to do it. Thanks, guys, for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Yep.
You got it.
How do folks find out more information on your organizations?
TechstrongGroup.com is our umbrella kind of thing, but you can go to techstrong.tv or DevOps.com, Cloud Native Now, Security Boulevard for most of your audience will find. If you're into the AI stuff, Techstrong.ai, Digital CXO for transformation for leadership.
You're all over. They're not going to have a hard time finding you.
We're not hard to find. All righty.
Well, thanks to our audience. You can get more Kitecast episodes by going to kiteworks.com/Kitecast. Thanks for joining us for another podcast.